You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind.
With the emergence of global internet, a human population of several billions, an electronic noosphere, that we are now within the shadow of this transcendental object at the end of time.
I find it a little difficult to say what the subject matter is going to be, because
Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace.
Shake and bake, steps back, three-pointer, bang!
Good evening, fellow Universal Travelers. We are here with another episode of the Midnight Variety Hour. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend Adam, and since this is Tom and Adam's Midnight Variety Hour, it's only fitting that that would make me Tom. We're here for another great episode I'm really excited about today because it is the first official episode of the show, and yeah, I'm feeling good about it. Adam, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great and super happy to have my good friend. I call him Sosa. You can call him Anthony or whatever you would like, but I'm sure he doesn't care. This is my man, my brother. I've grown up with him. We've gone through many, trials and tribulations, but also a ton of great times. And so we have a long history, but we go back as far as his childhood. So when we look back at our childhood, it's like we have this strong connection with somebody. So he's literally my brother.
Right.
And it's really awesome to have him here. And he's gone through an amazing journey through, he put me onto so many things like yoga, Alan Watts we were just talking about, you name it. And so throughout this journey, he's taught me so much. I'm sure I've taught him some things. And it's amazing to have him here to really express himself, what he's gone through, and hopefully teach some people some new interesting things that you may not know. So, yeah, I'm excited to have him here. Welcome, Sosa.
Man, thank y'all. I just want to say how honored I am to be episode 1. I listened to episode 0 and I love the intro. I really love that. So it makes me really want to listen. And yeah, I'm just feeling honored to bring my energy to give it the momentum to what y'all are going to create with this show. I'm really, really excited to be a part of it and allow my energy to, again, just contribute to what y'all are doing. So thank y'all for having me.
I mean, honestly, man, we're honored to have you. You look very majestic with brains in the background and stuff. You look like the exact kind of person I'm in the mood to talk to today. So it's awesome to have you here. I wish we could have you here in person, but you are in Colorado, I believe. So unfortunately, that's not possible. But that's very cool because thanks to the wonderful technology of the 21st century, we were able to make this possible. So hopefully we'll get you down here and we can have you in person sometime.
Yeah, we'll definitely make that happen. Yeah, I'm in Boulder, Colorado. Grew up in Houston, Texas. So that's how, as Adam was saying,
H-Town.
I've known him since pretty much elementary school. Yeah, and it's been a great journey, and I feel like there's so much that I'm still learning and growing. But I really want to open this way of, questions. I absolutely love questions. So feel free to pause me. Because I might go into a flow, like a freestyle, a rhythm of speaking and just kind of allowing the words to unleash. And so pause and ask me questions because I'm just a deep seeker of universal knowledge and wisdom. And I feel free to share that with you two and then with anyone listening. So
okay, I'm glad you said that because I feel like there's going to be a lot of times today where I'm like, wait, you just blew my mind. Give me a second to unpack that because the stuff that you have been educated on and kind of the things you're interested in, I feel like a lot of them are things that are completely alien to me. So I'm definitely going to probably stop you a few times. But before we get into the meat and potatoes, the real questions, I just have to ask you what Adam was like as a kid. I'm dying to know what little Adam was like because I've only known Adam for a fraction of the time you've known him. So I'm dying to know what baby Adam was like.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, when Adam and I first met, we didn't like each other.
Wow. He's such a likable guy. At least he is now.
It was the neighborhood drama,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of feuds and rivalries in the streets of our little of playing street football and basketball, and
Right.
Adam was always like scrawny and like really skinny, and he had he definitely had a complex of being like really strong and tough, but he was and I was his brother, like him and his brother were like, we're the same age. So I was like I was his brother's friend, and then Adam had his friends, and we were only a year apart. So we didn't we kind of bumped heads at first because we would play against each other in basketball and everything. And once I started staying the night over at his house and playing and beating him occasionally in Madden more or less, I was better at 2K. But when that started happening and staying over a few times, we warmed up to each other. But yeah, as a kid, Adam definitely grew into his body more. He was always the scrawny, short hair, buzz cut, white kid that talked a lot of shit. And maybe could back it up. That's how I remember Adam.
I can just picture you guys just riding on your bikes, just wreaking havoc on the neighborhood. Just
oh yeah. No, we had some. we did have some crazy times. Some of the most memorable times though are when we were so you remember that time we were wandering around? I actually just told the story to one of my friends. We were just wandering around the streets. It was 2 a.m. We were out for no other reason other than that we were just bored and had nothing to do, and just roaming the streets. I know Sosa remembers this. And I saw this Toyota Supra. I was like, oh, it's a badass car.
Fast and the Furious just came out. You were like, oh.
Yeah, right. And it's oh, they don't make them anymore and stuff like that. I was like, oh, it's just a cool car. And so I went, not knowing any other. I don't know. We were probably 11 or 12. Went and looked in the driver's side window to look at the dash. Oh, look how cool it looks. You know what I mean? Or see how fast it went or something. And we continue on our journey. We're oh, that was cool. Whatever. And we were sitting on a curb. It's 2 a.m. Cops roll up on us. Whoop whoop whoop. Literally 2 or 3 cops. I don't remember. It felt like it was 2 or 3 cop cars roll up on us. And they're like, what are y'all doing? Or start questioning us. And turns out somebody saw me looking into the car thinking that I was, either trying to steal or a kid. I mean, I was.
And they were oh, that kid's going to steal that Supra.
Yeah. And so me and Sosa both got taken to our parents' house and had to tell the story and stuff. It was pretty funny. But we just had nothing else better to do in that neighborhood. It was
been wreaking.
We just tried to make fun. So anyway,
early days. That's funny.
What you been up to, Sosa?
Yeah, just the last comment on that. Adam was the kind of kid who, if you're nah, let's not do that. He's no, don't be scared, little kid. Do it.
Yeah.
Go knock on that person's door and we're gonna run away.
Yeah.
Or he'd be late at night
funny.
and put on a Chucky mask and try to scare you in your sleep. That was
Jesus.
Adam.
We had some good times. That was fun. Yeah.
But yeah, and so one thing I'll just name is that Adam really refers to me as Sosa, and that's my last name, and so I definitely have a persona coming out of Texas, Houston, Texas, and that I was known as Sosa, and then I another persona, when I moved here to Colorado, and especially I went to I went to university at Texas Tech, and when I left kind of Houston, Texas, I became Anthony. I was like, oh man, who's Anthony? I had to kind of find out who that was. Everyone knew me as Sosa.
Right.
So either way, whatever y'all want to call me, Anthony or Sosa.
Tom wanted to name this podcast "These Bitches Love Sosa."
Oh, I thought it'd be amazing if the name of the episode was just Episode 1, These Bitches Love Sosa. I think it'd be amazing. If you guys don't know, that is the Chief Keef song.
Yeah.
I highly advise everyone go listen to it after this podcast. So it's actually interesting because my birth name is Thomas. No one calls me Thomas, and occasionally, whether it's been in college classes or at a job or something, unless I tell someone to call me Tom, they just see my name on a roll sheet or a resume and they go, "Oh, Thomas," and I'm like, "Who are you talking to? I don't know anyone named Thomas." But yeah, so my name is Thomas, but I've never gone by it. My parents don't even call me that, so it's really interesting. But okay, so let's get into it. I've been excited for you to come on the show for a while now, and I kind of just wanted to start the show off by, could you just give everyone who's listening kind of an idea of what your educational background is, what it is that you study, and kind of what it is that you are interested in?
For sure, yeah. Thank you for asking. So, I'll just, this will be just a little short story. So I invite everyone listening, just put on a different pair of goggles to kind of see through this lens that I'm going to speak to you through, and so growing up in Texas, I was really influenced by these values of capitalism, making money. And one of the things I was going to do, because I was good at math and science, was petroleum engineering. And so I graduate high school. Oh, cool. Go to Texas Tech, good engineering school. I love traveling, so I was like, I can travel and make money. boom, I go there, I'll be out in 4 years and I'll have a good paying job. And that was the status quo that in psychology, we call that interjections. That's what I was kind of digested without actually critically thinking about it. And so I went to Texas Tech University out in Lubbock, Texas, for those who don't know. I wanted Patrick Mahomes to win because I actually went to university when Mahomes was at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
So I'm sad that he lost, but he got humbled. That's great. So just a quick little note on that. So I went to Texas Tech, and that's really where I think, so much of my education, or where I came into my own. And there's many layers to the story, and we'll come back to it, I'm sure. But what is most important to know is that I was doing this engineering, and I just felt unsatisfied. And I had a really traumatic event happen in my life, and I won't go into that now, but just knowing in this sense that it's only really an experience of death and dying, or being in close proximity to that, is how we truly awakened. And so it was some event like that in my life that propelled me to really grow up, mature, and find out who I am, what I want, and what do I want to do with this time and energy, specifically in university. So after that event, I actually lived in Australia for half a year, where I went and lived in Melbourne, Australia, which is like the southeast corner of Australia. Yeah. And it was in that time where I really started to have an outside perspective on the cultural customs and patterns and habits of the American lifestyle. And I had this perspective of really just seeing a completely different way, and it really did widen my perspective. Like this literally kind of expansion in space where I could see more of the horizon and really start to discover what I wanted. So that was an incredible experience living in Australia. I got to travel to New Zealand. I geeked out about Lord of the Rings stuff.
Oh, yeah. Essentially, you went to Middle Earth. You were in Middle Earth.
I was at Middle Earth, and I was down under.
Right.
Let me tell you. And I did that all by myself. I didn't know anyone, and I just traveled there. And coming in that experience, I asked myself fundamental questions. And I think questions are truly the only answers that we really seek, are the questions themselves.
Yeah.
And I asked myself a question, what is it that I really want to study, really want to do? And I went back to my childhood. What did I love as a child? And I remember being in, the library, and I would always be gravitated towards the books about astronomy and astrophysics, because those images of the stars, of the nebulas, of the clusters, that was literally like magic, and it was like art, and it was the most majestic thing I ever said. So I felt this magnetized towards stars. So I'm like, I'm gonna go study physics. And that's really where it kind of the context behind, I went to Texas Tech and I studied physics. I did a concentration in astrophysics. So I did a lot of astronomy research. I got my minor in psychology and mathematics. I really love both of those subjects. And I also did research during that time with a professor who had studied the neuroscience of mindfulness meditation. So during that time, and that was an interface, neuroimaging was an interface between psychology and physics, because all the modern medical devices that we use, like x-rays and all these things, PET scans, EEGs, fMRI, depends on physics, like the foundation of physics. Right. And that's what I started to study. And so that was really what I studied, was like my background, my way of thinking about the world was really informed, and it was really carved out by physics and astrophysics. So the way I like to think about it, to really stimulate the right hemisphere of your brain, this bilateral way of communicating, is I imagine that my perspective is informed with tools that include both a microscope and a telescope. So at any moment of time, my mind can zoom in to the smallest fundamental constituents of existence, matter, and energy. And then at the same time, like a telescope, look out into the stars and the universe, and then look at our way of being in relationship with ourselves and the world from those two perspectives, and then beginning to find what's in the middle. So I'll pause there, because I know that may have been a lot, and just leave it open for y'all.
Yeah, that is a lot, man. It's really interesting, because you brought up something that I don't think a lot of people realize. Like, the importance and the amount of things that are based in like Newtonian physics. I think people think of physics and they just think about rocket science and they think about, whatever they're doing at NASA, but they're not really sitting there thinking about modern medicine and just like biology and, like you said, MRIs and, EEGs and things like that. All of that stems from Newtonian, general physics. And it's really cool when you meet someone who has done, studying and research in the studies of the mind, but also physics and astrophysics, and kind of pairing them together, like you said, to kind of get that microscopic and that telescopic view of everything, which is really cool. You're probably the first person I've ever met who's kind of combined those two things, at least in my own personal life. So I think it's really cool. And so you studied that at Texas Tech. How far into your time at Texas Tech did you actually, decide this is what you wanted to do? Did you go to Texas Tech and like, boom, right away, you knew already? Or was it like you had been there for maybe a year or two before you actually made that decision?
Yeah, and just really well said. It was after I came back from, I had this event in my life of loss,
right,
confronting death. I went and kind of soul seeking and self-seeking, and I traveled across the world and lived in Australia. And it was in those, and I'm compounding a lot of the story, for sake of time.
Right.
But it was really after that, when I came back from Australia, I decided like, nope, I'm not going to do petroleum engineering because that shit is not going to be sustainable for the environment. Money's not going to make me happy. I know this in the deepest sense possible. And I'm going to follow my curiosity, which is more self-fulfilling, more self-enriching.
Right.
And there's also these cultural considerations of being a physicist and identifying as someone who's smart and intellectual. That was at that time very appealing to me, and I still feel residues of that. So it was actually probably a year and a half to 2 years while I was in Texas Tech that I actually made that shift, like in many ways, internally and externally, and I followed through with studying physics, astrophysics, doing psychology and and then doing the neuroimaging and the neuroscience type of research. Because one more thing I'll say about that story is when I was in Australia, I could feel this deep sense, and it was based in my upbringing of how imbalanced I was as an individual. I was being emphasized for all this intellectual development, how smart I am, how successful I am was built upon how smart I was, how well I could think, right? And so I felt so imbalanced. I could not emotionally process things. Spiritually, there were times where I felt lost. Physics was actually one of my first transpersonal experiences because it let me feel connected with something larger than just myself, with nature, with the universe, with the stars. So I found a lot of connection and interconnection, and I'll have a lot more to say about that. But yeah, and so then I found I used to be that guy who lifted weights and played basketball.
Right.
I was that guy.
Classic dude. Yeah.
That guy, we go to the gym,
Y'all should have seen Sosa in there trying to do body. He would like literally try to build massive muscle. He got big for one point. I was like, dang, Sosa, chill, man.
Just pumping iron.
There was a point, and my half brother, older, he was like a professional bodybuilder. So I had that.
Oh shit. Okay.
Familial, like getting big, looking big, and looking strong. How I look on the external really mattered. And then along with those shifts in mindset from who am I, what do I want to make in my life, what is my purpose, what attracts me and gravitates me in relationship to my natural curiosity as a kid, I just started experimenting. And I would just start trying yoga. And for a while I was like, this is just some stretching shit. And it was hard.
I used to think the same way. I think the first time I ever was exposed to yoga, I was staying at my uncle's house in Seattle with my cousin, who might be listening to this. And we were just like bored. We were house sitting for my uncle for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We were bored. We didn't know what else to do. And we had been working out a little bit. Like he had a total gym in his house. We were kind of working out. And one day we were just like looking for like DVDs to watch. And we came across this like yoga DVD. And I was like, this shit looks so dumb. Like this is just stretching. Like why? I was like, put that shit in. Like let's. And like, man, fucking 5 minutes into this damn yoga DVD, I'm like, what is happening to my body right now? I was like on fire. I don't think it was like a beginner DVD. It was like definitely, I like was so unflexible at the time. And it was just like, that was the moment where I realized, okay, this is not just stretching and like being I think the media kind of like makes yoga seem like a really stupid thing. Like you see yoga portrayed on like TV shows and in video games, like in Grand Theft Auto, there's a yoga instructor character and he's just like a total moron.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until like I just picked up this random yoga DVD that I started to take it seriously. I genuinely just thought it was like a stupid stretching thing.
Right.
But it's actually pretty,
Right.
it's not for everyone.
Is talking about journeys, and thank you for sharing your beginnings, Sosa. And as far as yoga goes, that was like my introduction into like my spiritual journey in my
Right.
life. Like I grew up Christian, went to church a lot, did Sunday schools. I did
Right.
all of that. You know, I went on retreats with the Sunday school. And we did a whole bunch of really cool stuff, but it was I never felt anything like, you know, spiritual really. It was
Right.
more just like a day to day. Every Sunday you go do this, you go
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that. And it wasn't until yoga when I really understood like how deep spirituality can go and how much you can experience. And so like the understanding obviously that we have in the West is it's just a body exercise, something for you to look good, feel good, and we don't really dive deeper into the spirituality side of it. And that also ties into what you were talking about with physics and your whole journey, Sosa, as far as the science, the dogmatic science views and things that we really detach spirituality and really consciousness from our science today and the way we perceive the world. And this will lead me into the other thing I wanted to get into with you, which is transpersonal psychology. And it really sounds like you've always been an introspective person, like really diving deep and like into yourself and trying to understand who you are and what you want to do, especially from and I think what you were saying as you were saying, it really rooted from a traumatic event that really kind of awoke in that side of you, that spiritual side of like, wow, like this body's temporary, this life is temporary. What do I want to do? What's my purpose? What am I doing here? And so going into physics, trying to understand the universe, right? Trying to understand how the universe works. Like, what does all of this mean? Why am I here? Like, how do the stars float in the sky like that? All those questions that we have, like and so you mentioned you took a mindfulness, you did a mindfulness research with one of your professors, and so this sounds like you almost fell into transpersonal psychology when you're at Naropa University now. And please talk more about that. And I want to know, did you know what transpersonal psychology was, or what the word transpersonal even meant when you went to Naropa and chose to dive into transpersonal psychology?
Yeah, before I get into transpersonal psychology, I didn't know that at the time, and it's a very uncommon word that we don't use in everyday conversation. So don't worry, I'll tell y'all and the listeners what that actually means, because it can sound like, what the fuck is that? And the last thing I just want to say to like close up that, that part of the story is that yoga was the way that I found balance. Physically, it made me feel good. Emotionally, it was a place where I could show up and there was no part of me that had to be excused from the conversation, right? And so, and during my time, so here I was studying physics, astrophysics, right? The mind, all about understanding the universe so that I could understand myself through the mechanism of the mind, right? What is the mind? And then that's where it led me to psychology. So during that time of studying physics, I became deeply embedded in yoga. And as a seeker, as someone trying to seek truth and the nature and true nature of who I am and what this universe is about, I found yoga as a way of embodying knowledge, not just thinking about it and knowing it, but knowing it cellularly in my body through practice. So during that time, I also became a certified yoga teacher. I taught university students, university athletes. I taught many populations of people, got over 1,000 hours of experience. After I graduated, I dedicated myself to practicing every day and teaching. So there was a period of my life of intense aloneness where I just dedicated everything to the practice of yoga. Yoga being a practice over 4,000 years old, one of the 6 orthodox schools of Hinduism, right? What is yoga? I could talk about I can go really deep in studying Sanskrit, integrating Western knowledge here, right? If you imagine a map and you see North America, the Western side of the hemisphere, with Eastern mysticism. So all this is going to come back to is connection and integration. So here was me connecting wisdom, not just knowledge, but wisdom of Eastern practices, specifically yoga. I'm the one who gave Adam the Water Coast Way by Alan Watts. I listened to Alan Watts. I listened to Taoism. I studied Buddhism. I studied Zen in my time of studying physics to round out my experience intellectually. And so I embodied yoga. So I'm also, if you had to create a category for what I am at this moment, there's many things: a student, a teacher, a facilitator, instructor, a yoga practitioner, a scientist, spirituality practitioner, right? I really think it's all about integration, unity, and the balance of science and spirituality. So, and that's really what led me to coming to now in Boulder, Colorado, at the university called Naropa, which is a small little private school, affiliated with people like Ram Dass back in the 70s, started by this guy named I'm forgetting his name right now, Trungpa, who wrote Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, which is a great book. He wrote that book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, and he's the founder of Naropa University in Boulder. And so, and that's where I'm at now, doing a master's degree. So I had my bachelor's, did that research in neuroscience. So, you see behind me there, if you're listening, what you can imagine, there's this poster behind me of different, sections and perspectives of the brain. And I love studying the brain as well as studying physics, and so when I'm at this school to get my master's degree in mental health counseling. And then to go a little deeper than that, the concentration of the program is called Mindfulness-Based Transpersonal Counseling. And that's a mouthful, and I'll get into that. But so that's where I'm at now. I'm doing my master's degree. I'm also a movement practitioner. So Edo Portal lineage, I also do stuff like that. A yoga practitioner, a handstand, I really specialize in doing handstands as a literal physical representation of what it means to embody equilibrium. And that goes, on the physics level, quite literally, I took physics, embodied it in my experience of what it means to find balance and equilibrium, internally, externally, intrinsically, right? And so that's a big part of who I am, is movement, somatic orientations. I also do things just to, overwhelm you. We're like, man, what is all this stuff? And just to put it all on the table, I also do neurofeedback research. I'm a neurosculpting facilitator, which is a type of meditation based in neuroscience. So just giving you an overview, kind of laying out everything. Here's what I am.
Right.
There's a multiplicity of things that we can go into, but let's stick with that transpersonal part. And I'll leave it to y'all. What do specifically, what would you want to know about it?
Well, see, I mean, you threw out so many terms there, and I feel like I want to break it down and have you define all of them. But so for right now, just on this same vein that we're heading on right now,
Sure.
Could you just the word transpersonal, obviously you can break it down into trans and personal. So, yeah. But for just everyone's benefit, what would you say your definition of transpersonal, in the simplest terms? If someone was born last week, how would you explain transpersonal, what that actually means?
Definitely. So before I say that, one of the things I really took away from the first podcast that y'all did was talking about history. Mm-hmm. I know that's something you emphasize.
Yeah.
And the perspective that I will offer is the history of words themselves.
Right.
This is called etymology. Etymology is the study of words, the meaning of them, how they became to be as they are, right? Mm. And so the history, because I love that take that y'all have on history. And so my perspective is well, I like history, but I just like knowing the history of words.
Right.
And so you can think of etymology as an archaeology of our human thought process to excavate deeper layers of where does this word come from. So right. I'll just preface it with what is transpersonal with I love etymology. So I'll be using that a lot as my basis to break down in digestible chunks. What does this mean, basically? So simply transpersonal, if we look at the word, personal, interpersonal, transpersonal, right? The word trans is actually in what it comes from in Latin, that means something that goes across, through, or beyond, like the transatlantic or translation. It goes through some process. Right. And then personal, we're familiar with our personal experience. We're familiar with interpersonal experience. And so transpersonal can be simply understood as the experience and the study of that which is beyond the personal ego, the personal individuality. So we will take a universal perspective, right? We look at experiences that go beyond just yourself, this localization of self, psychologically, right? Physically, emotionally, all the different ways, spiritually. That's really what this transpersonal is, a way to go not just beyond the layers of the personal and interpersonal, but through them. So it integrates them and then goes beyond those layers. And so it's transcendence with the inclusion. And so that's really what transpersonal psychology is. It's the study of experiences beyond just the personal experience of the ego.
Right. I would venture to say that like your average person, your average American doesn't even, like, that's not even on their register. Like the idea of going beyond the personal persona, the idea of going beyond how you view yourself as the, like, who you perceive yourself to be, right? The individual, your own individual personal ego and your personal self-image. I would say a very small percentage of the average American is even aware that there's anything even beyond that. You know what I mean? I think so many people are so consumed by their own self-image and by their own inner thought processes that they don't even think about, you know, applying that whole trans aspect to it. So, I mean, what would you say it means to live or think transpersonally? Like, how would you explain operating on like a transpersonal level to the average person who isn't even really aware that there's anything even beyond their own individual persona?
Sure, for sure. It's a great question. So I like to use kind of visual imagery. So I imagine if you just, you know, for the listeners, for, you know, as you're speaking, you can also imagine, you know, what I'm saying is like in, you know, so just imagining a circle, and in the middle of the circle, that's the personal, that's, you know, that's the individual right there. That's usually what we're identifying with in every moment, is just that personal individual experience. And then we draw another circle around that. And then, you know, in that circle, we put the interpersonal, the social domain. We know that we can't live completely isolated because we're embedded in a social environment, right?
Right.
Relative to whatever city, country, you know, geographical location on this globe, on this planet that we're in. So then there's that, right? We're embedded in a political system, communities, right? So there's that. We're familiar with that aspect. And then I would just say, if you drew one more circle, that's the transpersonal, that's the universal, right? From a scientific perspective, it's the universe.
Right.
It's simply what physics does every day, just on the intellectual level. It's just studying, oh yeah, we're in a solar system. Oh yeah, the Earth is in a solar system. Oh yeah, that solar system revolves around a common star, the sun, that we rely on every single day. By just looking and reminding yourself of the sun, that you're connected to that sun, is transpersonal.
Right. Yeah, I was watching a video last night about transpersonal psychology, and it was kind of interesting because they were mentioning in the video, it's actually a video that Adam sent me. You know, every day we kind of go through life and we think of things in a way where everything is kind of like disconnected. You're like,
Yes.
Boom, I'm me, I'm this person, I'm in this body, I'm in my own brain, I have these thoughts. But really, you know, when you think of yourself like, okay, right now I know I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm sitting in a building in Houston, Texas. When really, it's like you're in the cosmos and everything is connected. You know what I mean? There's not that separation of like, oh, I'm here, I'm in this country, which is, you know, outlined by this man-made border that, you know, no one even really understands why it's there, why it turns this way or curves that way or is separated here or there. You're really in the cosmos and you're really connected to everything.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of one of the things that like was a huge mind fuck to me, because I would say for the majority of my life, probably up until like last night watching this video, I've lived the majority of my life not even thinking about that. I just think about like, oh, I have to go to work. Oh, did I go to work? Now I have to eat. Did I eat? Okay, now it's time to sleep. You don't even think about like how you're actually connected to everything. Like literally everything. Like you said, like the sun. You drive down the street, you see the sun. You're not even thinking about how everything you do and everything every human on this planet does is connected to this like this actual not interstellar, but this cosmic body. You know what I mean? That you're connected to somehow. So I think that's a really cool way to think of transpersonal for someone that has no idea. You know, going into last night, I didn't even know what the word meant. And now that I kind of know what it means, but also have a way to connect it to my daily life, I think that's really cool. So it's really cool that you deal with that, because I would say that's something that 99% of the world doesn't even think of.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sosa. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, no, that was just super well said. And before you go, Adam, you know, because it's always a little awkward game to, you know,
get in there.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of basic aliveness in that awkwardness. I love it. But yeah, you know, you could say at the very heart of all human suffering is our belief that we're separate from one another, that we exist emotionally, individually, you know, psychologically, physically separate. And when I was studying physics, when I came around the concept, which in other parts of the world is completely normal, that everything is indeed connected to everything else, I use physics as my way to understanding that. And there are literal ways rooted in physics and the new paradigms emerging out of physics to show that even though your experience psychologically of yourself right now in this moment, you may feel, as whoever's listening, you may not feel connected to that person across the street, or what, you may not feel connected to yourself, and that's okay, right? That's normal in this country.
Right.
And however, physics, science, and the way I'm working with people now to give them that experience of such, and what at the heart of yoga, unifying, is about feeling so deeply in your entire being that how you are connected and how you are interconnected with all forms of life. And then go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, no, to tie on to that, sorry, I'm trying to switch over here.
It's all right, man.
So like inherently, and you're working on this, Sosa, is like it's healing to understand that, right? Like if you ever, you know, just knowing simple facts. I love just reading simple facts about like the universe or yourself, that like, for example, like we're all made of stardust.
Right.
Like just knowing
That's
that
kind of the dopest thing you could ever
right.
think about.
Doesn't that just sometimes gives me chills? Like I'm just like, whoa. It's like these little aha moments, these little light bulbs
Right.
go off, and it makes you feel alive. It makes you feel like something goes off in your brain that like, wow, I am connected. I am special in some kind of way. And I think transpersonal psychology really does that. It really connects with that. And the same with spirituality. And I think transpersonal psychology probably took a lot, I'm sure it did, a lot of its, I guess, techniques and things from ancient practices like yoga, Buddhism, and things like that. And understanding what you were also talking about, Sosa, about this delusion we live in. Like Buddhism talks about it, how we're in this, and like obviously enlightenment and becoming enlightened is almost breaking that illusion or whatever it is, that and that illusion is that we are disconnected, that we are just this single body and everything else is separate from us. And it's a really powerful thing, and that's why I love that transpersonal psychology is used to heal.
Right.
And I think certain spiritual practices can heal, and it can give you these perspectives of the world and yourself that just inherently make you a better person, or just help you function throughout your day in just a more healthy way with yourself and other people.
Yeah.
You know?
So
it's pretty amazing.
So then I'll ask you both this. So like obviously we've all lived on Earth. We kind of know how stuff works down here. We live in a world, I think we all three of us would agree, like it's pretty broken down here. Like it's there's so much like just unhealthy stuff, and there's just so much like the world, like not to sugarcoat it, it's pretty fucked up right now. Like just things feel really crazy all the time. What do you think a society would look like, or what do you think an Earth would look like where everyone strive to live with like transpersonality? Like
you
what
asked me
would
this question before. It's really fascinating.
What would Earth look like if everyone had a transpersonal mindset? If everyone had that mindset of everyone is connected to everyone, you know, seeing beyond your own personal, your inner persona and all that, what, and both of you feel free to answer, but I'm just curious because you guys know more about this than me. What would a world look like where everyone kind of had that transpersonal psychology in mind?
Sosa?
And if that's like too big of a question,
that is a big question.
Feel free to like just give like an answer that's like been summarized down. You don't have to start drawing a diagram.
I will say just off of the top, thinking about like communities and probably cultures who, even throughout back in time where their spiritual practice or their religion or tradition was so strong in that community, where, it's not necessarily called transpersonal, but they were on that kind of level where probably not everybody, but I think there has been times throughout history where you have had pockets of the world living in that kind of way, in that kind of harmony.
Especially Native Americans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
even though they're at war, but still, I remember reading, I just read a recent book written by a Native American. They were talking about how they saw the world, and it was like almost magical, like everything's alive. Like when they looked at a plant, it wasn't just a plant. When they looked at a bird, it just wasn't a bird. And so everything was more alive, more spiritual. They were just more connected to everything. And that's really like the whole point of it all, just of this whole topic,
Yeah, like I've seen, things written on Native American tribes where it's like, we see things now as like, oh, this is America's land, and if someone crosses over this little imaginary line, they're illegal. They shouldn't be here because they came from that land, and this is our land. Whereas like a lot of Native American tribes didn't see it as like our land or their land. It was just the land. Yeah, this is just the
Mother
land
Earth,
that's here. It exists here as Mother Earth. Everyone, it's the land.
For sure.
So, is that kind of what you would envision? Like everyone kind of living a lifestyle like they lived? Would we have...
Not necessarily, not in the context of, living in a hut and things like that, but more of the mindset that they were in. More of the way they treated each other and the land around them and their community. And, obviously people are going to point to war and they killed, and there was obviously a lot of things that weren't inherently good that you would say good. And then we can get in that topic, what is good and what is evil, which is a whole nother topic. But, but I think you just want to root it down to the mindset. How was their spiritual practice? What was their everyday life like? What were their rituals? And it goes deep, you know what I mean? So being really connected to yourself, to your family, to your surroundings, to your environment. And I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Sosa, but that to me kind of makes up what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
A culture that's embedded in that transpersonal perspective.
Yeah, the short answer is I don't know. Right.
Okay.
Short answer is that there are pockets of that. There have been pockets of this kind of way of being in complete synchronization and harmony with our universe, with our world. It's been here, and it would really, I don't know what that would look like, but that's what we're working towards. Romans couldn't imagine what society would look like now. And in that same way, we can't really envision completely how 200 to 1,000 years will look like. So it's a great question, and definitely one that I'll contemplate and ponder. What will that actually look like, Tom? And one thing to say about Native Americans and, what I've studied is that there is 4 commonalities to almost all Native American like practices or ways of living. And it all consisted of these 4 main themes. The first one being, the self, like our body, our self, like our entire psyche, like there was no disconnection between mind, body, emotions. The second one was community, right? Always having this sense of community with others. The third one was the environment, the totality of just nature as completely interdependent. And the fourth was spirit, just recognizing that which is invisible is completely the basis for all that is visible, spirit. And there's, this one book that I'm reading called The Fellowship of the River that I'm doing for an intro to psychedelic assisted class at Naropa. Really cool. There is this African healer, and she was also a scholar, and she said that mankind, and specifically Americans, she diagnosed them as being disconnected from 3 primary things. The first one being community, the second one being nature, and the third one being ritual. And how important ritual is for evoking the energy of spirit.
I would love to dive on ritual.
So that's a perspective, but I wanted to take a step back because, I don't know how many other people you plan on that know about physics. And this is like when people say we're stardust, what does that mean?
I mean, it sounds
So,
cool as hell to say.
can I
Yeah,
take a moment
please.
to like go into that?
Hell yeah.
Please do.
Of course.
So you, the listeners, have heard this saying by now in popular kind of culture, you are stardust.
It's so common now. I feel like I hear that shit now more than I've ever fucking heard it. I feel like it's like on posters on people's wall. And I don't remember anyone saying it until like 5 years ago. It sounds dope, but does anyone really know what it means? I don't think so.
Well, let me do my best to share what I know about that.
Okay.
Based on my study in astrophysics, right? So I feel really passionate about this. So one of the greatest discoveries of astrophysics was the origin of all the chemical elements on the periodic table. So if you imagine that, that white table in your chemistry class in school and all those little squares with all those little elements, right? Starting with hydrogen on the top left, and then there's helium, and then there's all these other ones. Boom. Okay. Astrophysics has really helped us to discover where all those elements come from. And so where those elements come from, they come from this process through which a star lives and dies. So there's this whole thing called the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram that shows you the lifetime of stars. And depending on the mass of a star will tell you almost everything about its qualities and properties, how long it will live, and everything, just by measuring the mass of a star. And so, we use our star, the sun, what is dependent on all forms of life right now is the sun shining. We use that as our baseline. So that's one solar mass. And then we measure everything relative to the mass of our sun. And so we know that a star undergoes this really incredible process in the very thermonuclear core that's so hot and condensed with so much pressure and so much heat. It undergoes this process called nuclear fusion. So this is where the intersectionality between particle and nuclear physics and astrophysics comes into play. That's where this really beautiful connection comes in. So a star, specifically more massive stars, undergo nuclear fusion. What the fuck is nuclear fusion?
I don't fucking know.
It's nuclear fusion. So nuclear is at the core, right? Like something in the nucleus, like every atom has a nucleus. It's when there's so much force and pressure in the core of a star, that's this thermonuclear furnace, that it can fuse particles together. And it's so strong that physicists have been trying to figure it out for a long time. And that's where nuclear reactor plants come from.
Right.
Because they try to create that, but we don't have enough energy or power to do that. So we only create nuclear fission, which is where the atomic bomb came from. The splitting of the atom has enough power to destroy lives. And as we've seen in, from the Manhattan Project. Right. So that's the power in an atom, to just split it. But a star can fuse it together. And the nuclear fusion that happens in a star, what happens is you have this core, and it's made of mainly hydrogen and helium. And then over time, we're talking about thousands and thousands of years, they undergo nuclear fission, and then a new core is born, and another layer, just like an onion being created. And then there are the heavier elements, right? So what we know as, the heavier elements beyond hydrogen and helium, oxygen and carbon and nitrogen, all those fundamental elements, right? Our body, H2O, hydrogen and oxygen, we're a carbon-based life, carbon, all that began in this core of a star undergoing nuclear fusion, to create new elements, literally to generate, to procreate new elements. And then over the course of a star's lifetime, which again is dependent on its mass, it will undergo this process where it will kind of fall out of balance, reach the end of its life, and then it will implode. It will start to expand to a point. And again, depending on how massive it is, it will then implode, collapse on itself, and then literally the most violent supernova explosion, boom, it will burst out, and the most accurate term is actually ejaculation. It will ejaculate.
Whoa, we got
everything
stars
in
out here ejaculating in the middle of space?
Yes, that process of death of a star
It's
is
life.
the same process that gives life to seeding all other forms of life in the universe. And that's what we mean by stardust or star seeds.
Oh, damn, these stars ejaculated and now we're all made of star seeds. Shit.
Dude, can I just say, Sosa, I'm so happy we're doing this podcast, man. This makes me so happy. I'm so serious. Like, I love this right now.
Specific timestamp. Star ejaculation.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's the title of the episode.
no
Star
doubt.
ejaculation. Star ejaculation with Anthony Sosa.
Yeah.
That's the
So
episode.
that's what it means when we say we're stardust. That, just very quickly to recap, is that stars undergo this process in their core, nuclear fusion. At the end of their life, depending on how massive they are, they implode on themselves, they collapse, then explode, and then they literally, in that explosion, is the seeds of new life, the heavier elements of carbon and oxygen. And then a fun little fact, and I won't tell you why, a star cannot produce an element heavier than iron. Iron is the stopping point of all the elements. So anything beyond iron, that wasn't made in a star.
How do
So
we know
that's-
that? How do we... Is it just because we haven't found an element heavier than iron that's been created by star
There's a-
fusion?
Or would it be more appropriate to say we haven't experienced that or found that
Yeah.
in our
Like,
universe,
is
or in
there-
our universe alone, our solar system,
Right.
I would say, right?
Yeah, is it just that
'Cause
we
we are
haven't
discovering-
discovered that to be possible, or is there a scientific reason why it can't happen?
So I would have to go back and really go into my astrophysics books
It's a deep
to really
question.
get
Yeah.
into the nitty gritty of that. But that's what, from our current understanding of astrophysics, there's just this energetic property of iron where, like, if you imagine a curve going upwards, and that point where it starts to flatten out and go down, at that top point is iron, where so it becomes less energy efficient for a star to produce iron, and then it starts to go down. And
Okay.
so that's what it means by your stardust, is that your origins, right, really do come from the process of stars. So when
Right.
you take a moment in Houston, Texas, or wherever you're listening from, to go out tonight to look up at the sky, that's transpersonal. You're looking and connecting, allowing that light to enter into your iris, into your eyes, into your your photoreceptors, to come in and give you an image of a blinking light, and that you come from that. You come from that.
Yeah, we need that meme right now. The guy's
Yeah, the guy's
explosion.
going fucking crazy. So that, honestly, if you're having a bad day, just think about that.
Yes,
You're sitting
it really
there,
will change your day.
You're sitting there in your fucking cubicle,
Yes,
and you're the product of star ejaculation.
and I'm typing
Or the-
away. The boss just gave me another assignment. I can't get off of work until 6:30, and I
Right.
got something to do at home.
I'm stuck in a traffic jam on the way home. You're stardust, baby. I love it.
Stardust, star seeds, whatever you
Star
want to call it.
seeds. There you go. So that's crazy.
I want to tie this into healing, Sosa, because
Okay.
I think it's so important. Like, because you were just talking about how that can make your day better, right? Just knowing that, right? And so what you're working on now, Sosa, correct me if I'm wrong, is the connection between therapy, understanding what therapy is and how we can use it to heal people with whatever condition we have, like trauma, physical, mentally, spiritually, anything like that. And how your understanding of physics, your understanding of psychology, and obviously your yoga training and these different aspects, and how you are using that now to heal yourself and to heal others that are given that opportunity.
Okay, before you answer that
Yeah.
question, could you actually just, because for most people, the word healing just means like bed rest or putting on a fucking Band-Aid or something.
Yeah,
Could
yeah.
you just like first define what you think healing is and maybe also what you think health is, and then answer that question, just because I think a lot of people wouldn't really grasp your answer if they don't know what you define healing to be.
Definitely. Yeah. So when we look, at the word healing or heal.
Sosa, I
Or
think there might
health.
be something over your microphone. Sounds a little muffled. So
Is that better?
yeah, it sounds better. Did you notice it? Sound. Never mind. Sorry, I didn't.
I just
Go
thought it
ahead.
was the internet connection, but
No, I think it's something on your microphone, a little muffled. But go ahead.
I haven't done anything, so is it sound good then?
Yeah, it sounds fine.
So to address this question, right, like what is really health? What is really healing? It's a really valid question. And I think this is where etymology serves us. When we really trace back what the word heal comes from, where it comes from this Old English Anglo-Saxon word hell. Like, and when I say that, I'm probably doing the pronunciation wrong, but H-A-L-E. And that word, like hell, like, and again, I'm not saying that, but like
Right.
that's the way I can say it, is actually related to the word whole, right? This word holy or wholesome or shalom, right? That H-A-L-E, that's really where it's coming from. To be healthy is to be whole. So when we have created this word health, we have had this inherent sense that integrity, like holistic integrity, being whole, a whole human being, is at the heart and root of what it means to be healthy. And healing is simply that restoration process of reclaiming our inherent wholeness, to be whole. Like all these words, holy, right? Holistic,
right.
it's all coming back to this notion of to be healthy is to be whole. To be whole is to be completely integrated and connected internally and externally.
Okay. Okay, so now that we kind of have an understanding of that, Adam, what would you say your question boiled down to? The one that I kind of like jumped in and interrupted you on.
No, yeah, I mean that. Well, my main question is, I just want to know how, and I want to know how Sosa is using physics, the understanding of physics, the understanding of yoga, the understanding of psychology, and these multiple disciplinaries to bring that to people who want to heal, to want to become whole, if you will. And so please take it away, Sosa. I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, and so again, I'm really just sharing from my perspective, right? Like this, I have really invested in my life in embodiment and embodying an interdisciplinary kind of approach to this, right? So you're getting a perspective from multiple dimensions and angles of illumination, essentially. So I came to Naropa to essentially heal and become whole, right? What does that mean? I recently wrote a paper called The Physics of Healing, which is exactly what you're asking. You know, how the science of physics and psychology come together to inform us to being healthy and whole, right? And so I'm trying to really think about the best way to show this. So what yoga gave me is this way of integrating everything in my life. So we're not disconnected. Yes, we are physical beings, but we also have emotional bodies, emotional experience. We have, mental bodies where our ego is. We have an intellectual body where we have these beliefs, these paradigms, these ways of making meaning. And then we have a spiritual body. What transpersonal psychology is, and even if you look at the word psychology, the original Greek meaning of psyche was soul or spirit or breath. So the study of soul, of psyche, right, is at the core of what psychology is. And when I really looked, I was deeply impacted. Again, my own life brought through death of someone I loved, really made me awaken to why am I here? And why am I suffering emotionally? Why am I, pain is inevitable, but why do I have these layers of suffering so attached to it, and how that's in the world, and how do I put a stop to that? First, how do I address it in myself? And then how do I give that to the world? And this has been going around since thousands and thousands of years, is addressing this notion of human suffering. And so using the modern language of science with spirituality is really in being a bridge in between these two seemingly realms, and yoga being this way of embodying the truth of that. Yoga is any process that facilitates equilibrium in the present moment and helps you to see reality as it is. The true original meaning of meditation and mindfulness, which has been decontextualized in the West, was to cut through illusion to see reality as it is. To cut through illusion to see reality as it is, to see yourself, to see things in this way that is connected. And when we don't, that becomes the source of our suffering. This way of working with the mind, because the mind is the most powerful tool, but sometimes we're slaves to the workings and the intricacies of our own mind. Who is control of your attention, really, right? And so this way, when I took physics, this intellectual way of understanding how I'm deeply connected with the physical world, how this physical universe around us works, right? A way of perceiving it accurately in a way that I'm not separate from any of it, coming into a realm through mindfulness practices. So integrating that Eastern mysticism wisdom, and wisdom is much different from knowledge. And this is really at the core of what I'm doing, is using the science and spirituality to give people, to support people in wisdom. Wisdom is something deeply deprived in our culture, and it's deeply needed. There's one thing about being in a society that's ruled by information and technology, but devoid of wisdom. Wisdom being this quality that emanates deep from the heart, that integrates the mind. This way of bringing compassion, and how do we use knowledge in a way that is sustainable, in a way that is holistic, in a way that doesn't cause harm to others, in a way that allows you to feel actually love, connection to those you care about, knowing all of that. So transpersonal psychology and mindfulness practices come together. And what I am trying to do is provide tools and services based on my own consciousness and transpersonal psychology consciousness, right? And we can get into the difference between what is conscious, conscientiousness, what is consciousness, what is the unconscious, what is pre-conscious, right? All these different ways. Consciousness is both the tool and the vehicle of change. It's both what we use as the vehicle of change and also the object of how we create internal change, so that you, whoever's listening, finds a way of feeling connected to the world, to themselves, and a way of addressing those patterns that come embedded in society from social conditioning that block, that interrupt our organismic way of finding ways of healing ourselves naturally, right? So the intelligence of inner healing that is completely in every single organism, it's in every single one of your cells, the ability to replicate, to heal, right? How do we take all that and provide you a way of consciousness, a way of being in healthy relationship, where you can be completely deal with all the ways of adapting to the unpredictable nature of life, right? Life is nature to be impermanent, to can be continually changing, and that causes a lot of stress. And when we don't manage that stress, we cause a lot of chronic diseases. How do we live in a way where we can live till we're old and find a sense of well-being, psychologically, mentally, emotionally? How do we find a spiritual connection, and what that is actually really practical? And through practices like mindfulness meditation, or just mindfulness, which is not even Eastern. It's just a skillful way of attending to the moment to moment experience of your mind. And so to sum this up, the physics of healing has three main assumptions. And before I say that, inner change, in my perspective, is predicated on two even more essential assumptions. That the here and now, the present moment, just being present, right, is the portal, is the way we create transformational change. And then number two, that the greatest wisdom of all world religions and traditions is to know thyself. Know your true identity. Being present and knowing yourself, right? These two commonalities that I found in all spiritual traditions. Just be present. Come back. Who are you really? Who are you identifying with? And then the physics of healing, this is the last thing I'll say, because I know and one thing I'll say that I learned from yoga, don't try to remember everything. Allow it to soak and percolate into your being. It's there. You don't need to try to grab it mentally. Just allow it to steep into your experience, into your being. And this is online, so you can go back and rewind it.
Rewind that shit. Yeah. I think
Rewind
that's,
that
I think I like, oftentimes I'll be listening to like a lecture or something, like, you know, talking to someone and I'm having like a really good conversation. I find myself stressing the fuck out over the idea that I know I'm not going to remember all this shit. And I'm like, I'm trying too hard to like remember every little definition that you throw out, or like I'm trying too hard to think about like, you know, okay, remember this, remember that. But it's like you got to just kind of like be present and just listen and kind of just let it flow.
You hold more memory and feeling.
That's true.
Versus the up your top, you know.
You don't really think about that if you don't even know that is how your brain works. Like I oftentimes I find myself stressing way too hard on remembering every single little detail. Totally not necessary. Yeah.
And that stress, how that is so common to every listener, every person you meet, is stress is inherent in life. Pain is inherent in life. But it's our way of responding to it that makes it all the difference. This way of consciously responding instead of reacting to the stresses, to the changes of life. Like what you just named, Tom. Like you notice that there is stress when you try to remember, try too hard to remember something. And there's a sense of fluidness and ease when you let that go and you just listen. Purely just listen.
All right, what was number 3?
So those were just assumptions about like those were just 2 more of my commonalities. So just very quickly, the 3 assumptions that I make in the physics of healing is that 1, everything is energy and vibration. It's all just energy. It's all just vibration, right? E equals MC squared. Literally the physical thing that you're experiencing, a table, the thing that you're sitting on, the thing you have listening to this, that physical thing shown by Einstein is just a function of mass, or that mass is just a function of energy and light. That's all it is. So 1, it's all energy, it's all vibration. 2, that energy is not continuous. All energy, everything exists on a continuum that is whole and unbroken. That's number 2. Everything, it's all energy, and all that energy exists on a continuum that is whole and unbroken. It's never disconnected. It's never separated. Just like the continuum that you've seen maybe in school, or a color wheel, right? That spectrum, that continuum, even though from, even a number, right? From 1 to 9, that's a continuum of numbers, right? But in between just 1 and 0, or 1 and 2, are infinite amount of numbers, right? So it's all a continuum, it's all unbroken. And then number 3, based in physics of non-locality, which, quantum entanglement, all those beautiful things, everything remains deeply interconnected, always. And those are the 3 assumptions that I base healing on. It's all energy, how we work with energy. It's all a spectrum, it's all a continuum, and everything remains interconnected, always. And based in that, I apply ways of healing psychologically, somatically, many, many different ways, neurologically, addressing trauma, or just helping you find less anxiety, less stress, or whatever it is. That's what I'm working towards addressing, knowing all of that.
So why do you think it is that like those 3 principles, or the ideas of, being mindful, like you mentioned, or, that lack of wisdom in the world, why do you think it is that those concepts and those principles are so alien to your average person? Like, why do you think the average person isn't operating every day with that kind of being their basis of how life works? Like, why is your average person not even thinking in a way that's even remotely close to that? Like, why is that such a foreign concept to the majority of the world?
Yeah, we're embedded in time and space, in specific cultural and specific culture. And, the word culture comes the word cultivate.
Right.
What we grow, what we tend to. And if you look at, I'm speaking relative to North American, US North American culture, westernization and globalization of capitalistic values that has kind of taken over the globe. Those values that come out of a larger cultural system, right, based in America, and this has been carried for a lot of, hundreds of years, going back to before North America as we know it, before it was just land and spaciousness and nature with Native Americans. But what we call it from these European values, that kind of disconnected everything below the body. It was all about logic and reason and disconnected everything. And I would even go as far to say that all of that is rooted in trauma that hasn't been addressed for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, going back to the Middle Ages. Hasn't been, that it's steeped down, it's come down, it's traveled through time, it stays in our bodies. Trauma lives in our bodies transgenerationally. The cells contain the memory of our ancestors. So given all of that, I think the reason why that's not the case is because this is simply not how culture works. And then when we have a culture that is traumatized but has forgot that it's traumatized so deeply that it's created ways of being distracted with the external world and focusing on just getting material gain. And there's a place for that. Focusing on just going to work and getting that grind and just doing this way of just living that's so maybe unfulfilling. And it's just the narrative, right? And so it's a big question, Tom, and I can't simply address it all in this time, but that's kind of what I would say for that. It's just the values of culture, which is embedded in kind of this larger societal framework, which has their own perspective and paradigm on how we live.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about, though, right? The idea that, like you have those certain like mindsets and things that you're thinking about, and mindfulness, and like you mentioned, all the transpersonal stuff. It's just interesting to think that so many people aren't,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think I think we can all condition ourselves if we're aware of it. If we're aware that we're being conditioned on a daily basis. And obviously media is such a huge part of our lives now, TV, phones, everything. And that is in itself conditioning, and we can curate what can condition us. I created an Instagram account recently, and because I was so against social media for a long time. I was like, I was so against it because, but I learned, and I was like, well, okay, I don't have to do or see what everyone else is seeing.
Right.
And especially with something like Instagram, I literally just follow people, and this is not because I don't care or like my friends or other people, but I really only want to follow things that are going to inspire me or whatever it is that I'm looking for.
Using social media only for things that will like enrich where you are.
Yeah. And so going back to what you're saying about that, I think people can really, if they know, first you have to know the information. First you have to know like these topics or these kind of things are even out there. And then once you do, then you can slowly condition or decondition yourself to align yourself more with what you think is important to you and what's going to make you fulfilled or bring you happiness or whatever it is. And then going back to what you were saying, Sosa, about your paper on the physics of healing, which I read, and it's incredible. And maybe we should, I don't know if you're comfortable with it, Sosa, maybe we can put a link to it. Maybe other people can read it. I don't know if you feel about that, but yeah, it's an amazing paper. And but what I love about your approach and your top three keys to that is like you can approach it in a secular fashion, and that's a huge thing with mindfulness now. And I'm taking a mindfulness class now, and it's all through this secular lens, and it's a beautiful thing, especially here in the West, where I think so many people are not in a church, they're not a part of any religion now. It's more now than ever. More people are going away from these traditions and religions, and I think presenting something like this in a secular fashion where you don't have to believe in any particular God or anything. You can just understand how the universe works and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. And then as you dive deeper into something like this, I feel like you're going to dive deeper into your spiritual self, and whether what you want to do with that, you can carry that on into you can pick up a spiritual practice or whatever later. But understanding this from the jump is huge. And then also what I would like to come back to is that we're all one.
We're all one.
We're all one. Because like what you're saying, you're talking about this spectrum, you're talking about this continuum, you're talking about this interconnectedness of everything in the universe. We're talking about stardust and how we're essentially made up these essential elements that make up the entire universe. And I think it's so huge to understand this. And this has made a huge impact on my life, is simply understanding. I know it sounds woo-woo when you say this, we're all one. You know what I mean? It sounds like, oh, what the hell? Shut up.
Yeah.
But it's really at the heart true. And you can say it many different ways.
Yeah.
You can say it in an infinite amount of ways, but just understanding that, look, we're all come from the same thing, whatever that thing is, the universe, and that we should be treating everything around us and everything, every person, every living creature, every non-living creature as a sacred thing, like as it's a part of us. Like I wouldn't be here without it. Like it's inherently sacred. It's inherently us and beautiful. And like, I don't know, just seeing the world through that perspective, even if it's just once a day or once in your life, just having that moment, like, wow, I think it's an incredible thing.
Isn't it interesting that that's like scoffed at or like looked down on? Not like looked down on, but like people clown you if you talk like that. Like,
for sure.
Oh, you're one with everything. Like,
right.
Oh yeah, I'm just one with the world, man. I'm just connected to everything. And people are like, hey, shut the fuck up. You know, like people just clown it. Like it's a stupid way to think.
For sure.
I just think that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I would say about that, right? And the way we become whole is embracing all our polarities and all our opposites. And what I'm going to speak to you is going to sound paradoxical, because exactly it is. The only way we can become whole is by embracing ambiguity and paradox. So oneness, and this is one of the greatest human paradoxes there is, oneness or complete unity comes only when we have true diversity. Complete biodiversity, psychological diversity, nature diversity and unity is what makes oneness happen. Is when every single person is completely their own uniqueness, authentic being. They're contributing to the whole by bringing in their diversity. We need diversity in nature. Adam knows this. We need our diversity in our gut flora.
Mm-hmm.
We need
love that
diversity for there to be unity.
Yes,
and they go hand in hand.
It's like the two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. I mean, light and shadow, whatever you want to call it, right? And so I want to respect time. And one of the last things I want to offer is like practices. What you can do as listeners, what you and, Tom could try and, as an experiment, and that could immediately begin to change your life. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Let's do it.
I'm down.
So one of the things, when I'm saying everything is connected, I can also speak to you from a neuroscience perspective. That all forms of self-regulation, the ability to regulate your life energy, right? The energy of your body, your mind, your thoughts, your words, your breath, all those forms that neuroscience is showing, this thing called the connectome, which is what scientists are showing, all the different ways the brain is connected, all forms of emotional regulation, attention regulation, focus regulation, affect regulation, all these depend on integration in the brain. And neuroscience has shown the more integration is across left and right, back and forward in the brain is what it truly means to be whole and healthy, and are indicators of greater sense of well-being and health. Is just how integrated your brain is, quite literally, which is measured by things like, gray matter, cortical thickness. I'm not going to go into that, but just know that all this depends on, and everything I'm going to suggest is a way of integrating the left and right hemispheres of your brain, the prefrontal, the front of the brain with the back of the brain, or top down and bottom up processes from the brain down to the body, and then from the body back to the brain. Integrating all those pathways is a way of talking about what true health and ability for your organism has the intelligence to heal itself. And that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about.
Holy shit.
Dude, I wanna keep talking for so much longer than this.
I know we could. How long have we been talking now? It's been.
I think it's
probably
about an hour 15.
Yeah.
All right. So this will be one of the last things that I want to give the listeners. And again, these can be really expanded on. So just know that they're meant to be simple. And then it's like, I think Leonardo da Vinci said, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. So the simpler you become in these practices, the more efficient it becomes.
Right.
So when we talk about being mindful, right, it's just a way of attending to the present moment with certain types of attitudes that we can bring. It's skillfulness of working with the mind.
Mm-hmm.
When we pay attention to where our mind is, and in that moment, we can direct where the mind needs to go. And how we use the energy of the mind is what impacts the body. So right now, as we've been speaking, maybe as a listener, you've been listening, this whole time there's been a under the radar process that's been helping you to be alive. And this process is identical with life itself, right? And it's your breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Your breathing is always there for you. The moment that you're born to the moment that you die is dependent upon your breath. All life is dependent on breath. And that can be a whole nother subject, right?
You don't even think about it.
You'll
Yeah.
come back, Sosa. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have you on the show a lot, and it's no one. You don't even really think about it. You don't even really think about how breathing is one, constantly happening, two, completely, integral to life.
Definitely.
Everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And breathing is the most, and this is for people who may have sensitivity, respiration things going on with their nasal cavity. So one, we always want to be breathing in and out through the nose. And you'd be like, well, my nose is always fucking stopped up. Well, there are ways to literally learn how to cleanse your nose. And when we talk about immunity, your nasal cavity is the first line of defense of your immune system. So having healthy nasal sinuses, just being able to like press into one nostril and just in the morning, like get it nice and clean and breathing in and out through the nose. We want to be doing that at least 99% of the time. If you run and you need to breathe out through the mouth, we need to be practicing nasal breathing. And that will already begin to change your internal chemistry and start to regulate better is this consistent nasal breathing in and out through your nose. So boom, breathing in and out through the nose. What I'm also going to be speaking to you is about ways of vagal toning or vagal regulation. Don't need to know what that is right now because, it's a whole other thing. But so just taking this moment, this simple method of pause, remember, breathe. You pause. You remember, because sometimes the hardest part being mindful is just remembering to be mindful. And then you remember to breathe. And as you breathe, think of it in this kind of way. You don't ever take a breath in, nor do you take a breath out. The process of breathing, the physics of breathing shows that what actually happens is that you create the internal space and the universe fills it. So I want you to shift this relationship with breathing that every time you take
face right now.
I can see Tom's face. Every time you take a breath in, you pause, you remember, oh yeah, what do I need to remember? Oh yeah, just to breathe. And then you think about creating more space with your belly, your diaphragm, your chest, your lungs, all the way up into your throat. And then you just allow that exhale to happen. And you can do that for 3 breaths. Maybe do it for a minute. Coming back to this notion of pause. In that moment of pausing between stimulus and response, you can choose. You choose to remember.
Yeah.
Remember whatever needs to be remembered. And then for this case, remembering just to pay attention, to give a little bit of focus to your best friend that's always keeping you alive, your breath. So that's one.
Yeah.
Pause, remember, breathe. Pause, remember, breathe. Create more inner space.
Right.
Second way, just slow down. Just remember to slow down. Mindfulness happens in every moment. We bring our awareness to whatever we're doing in that moment. So just slowing down how you stand up, walking slowly, eating slower, just taking a moment to consciously slow your process down.
Dude,
is
I
one of
eat
the most-
fast as hell. I think everyone does everything like super fast, especially in America. Everything is like, oh, go to the drive-through, go grab food, go, eat it in your car while you're driving to the next place you're going to. Sometimes, like,
Yeah.
I'm like eating things, and I'll realize to myself, I don't even really know how this tastes. Like, I'm not even thinking about what it tastes like. I'm not even thinking about. I just know that it's chicken nuggets, and I like what that tastes like. But it's like I don't actually think about like, okay, what does this actually taste like? What flavors am I getting?
What
from
is the
this?
texture? What is the smell?
Right.
Yeah, all that.
Like, oh, I'm eating, a salad. What are the individual flavors from each thing in the salad that I'm getting? I'm just eating it. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just like shoveling it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that is something everyone could really benefit from, is just slowing the fuck down. Just slow down.
Totally.
Slow down. And it can be as simple as walking slower, moving slower, chewing slower, right? Taking a moment to engage the senses, smell, taste, sights, touch. Just slow down. So we have that pause, we have that remember, breathe. And already in doing that, you're slowing down. Another simple way is just to ground.
Mm-hmm.
Grounding is the way, like, we regulate our organism with the energy of the earth, right? Drink clean water, get fresh air, go outside for 2 minutes and put your feet in the fucking grass and just sit there in the sun, right? Like, look at the stars at night, smell some flowers. I know Adam loves that, right? In the morning, this is really good. Just put some cold water on your face. It's a really good way, right? If you feel like you're just super low energy, hold an ice cube, right? Remember, these just ways to ground the body. Feel the ground underneath your feet in your seat right now. Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So those are some simple ways. And then the last thing I'll talk about, and this is what I want to end on, is the healing power of attitude.
Okay.
Your attitude towards life determines life's attitude towards you. We don't perceive things as they are, we perceive things as we are. Viktor Frankl, no one knows who he is, that's okay, wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a Holocaust survivor, became a psychologist, or he survived the Holocaust. And he, in the worst conditions and humanity possible, being in a concentration camp, he found that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose our attitude in any circumstance. So that moment where you pause, every mindfulness is going to come back to this pausing, this stopping kind of notion, just taking a moment to pause. You choose your attitude. What is my attitude towards this experience? And what are 5 main attitudes that you can try? The first one that I'll suggest is allowance. It's different from acceptance. Just try pause, and then you can just try to allow things to be they are. Just allow that, man, I'm stressed about this fucking pocket, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're stressed that, like,
No, there's very little stress.
nuggets and I wanted 6. Just allow that to happen. Like, just allow things to be as they are without needing to change them or add anything. Number 2, which I think is probably one of the biggest ones. How much do you trust yourself and the processes outside of yourself? So just as an experiment, ask yourself, what would it be like today that I trust the intelligence of my body to lead? I trust my body. Coming back to this notion of just, you don't have to like it, but just trust it.
Mm-hmm.
So an attitude of trust. Another one is, I'm gonna do just 2 more, is gratitude. And if gratitude in yoga say the attitude of gratitude is the highest form of yoga, just finding a moment in your day, and it doesn't even have to be gratitude. It can just be, what do you appreciate? Say, I appreciate this conversation. And then I take a moment, I savor that. I really, really appreciate that. And then I allow it to dissolve. Just a moment to appreciate, to find gratitude. And then the last one, which I think is the funnest one, is an attitude of paradox.
Okay. I don't even know what to think. What is an attitude of paradox?
I think all forms of intelligence, emotionally, intellectually, relationally, is the ability to hold contradicting ideas and to embody a kind of duality of our inner conflicting polarities. And when we reconcile these opposites, that's how we can embrace paradox. And with paradox comes a lot of humor, right? And there's a lot of theories based in paradox. I won't go into that right now, but all you can think about is attitudes of paradox between this notion of being and not being, knowing, not knowing, light, shadow, seriousness, and humor. Try to be seriously funny. Like there's this saying that the only thing in life you should ever take seriously are the jokes.
Wow. I like that.
So this notion of paradox, like allowing these contradicting ideas to come together. And when you see the basic irony and the juxtaposition of extremes, you can't help but laugh.
Right.
Paradox. And so just to recount, right, there's that paradox. There's this notion of just allowing things, pause, allow, right? Trusting, and just finding a simple moment of gratitude, simple moment of appreciation. And all these practices have been shown to do incredible things for your being if you can do them. And last thing I'll say is neuroplasticity, your inner representation of change, remodeling, reorganization. The power to change is literally embedded in your brain neuroplastically through your experience. And neuroplasticity depends on our ability to focus. So when you pause, you're focusing, and our ability to create repetition or habits. So the more you do this with conscious habit, the more it becomes a pathway of your literal psychophysiological, emotional, cellular being, your person. So I'll end right there.
God damn. That I'm going to use all the shit. I'm going to go home and just breathe for fun. I'm just going to make space and let the universe fill it. And
It can be fun.
I mean, yeah, like the whole time I was just listening to every one of those, I was like, yeah, these all sound like things that, I mean, I try and be grateful. I try and every once in a while, I try and tell myself to slow down, but not nearly as much as I should. Definitely not on a everyday level. So I feel like I kind of just want to say thanks, man, because I feel like I've gained a lot of new perspectives just like in the hour and 20 or so minutes that we've been talking. I've definitely had my mind blown a handful of times, and it's been really awesome talking to you. I'm really glad we had you today.
Dude, me and Sosa, bro, every time, sometimes I want to tell him, I'm like, Sosa, we've been on the phone for about 2 hours, man.
Right.
Like, I gotta do something else, but like, I can't. It's not that I can't get off the phone with him. It's that I love the conversations we have, and it's like, man, I could just talk with him for days.
I know.
And so I know we'll have you back on because there are so many, like, we have to unpack so much of what he just explained and said, and there's going to be so many subtopics on this.
It's shit. I mean, even at the end, just mentioning right there at the end the word neuroplasticity, I'm sure we could talk another hour and a half just on that concept alone. So, yeah, prepare to be on this show all the time because that was incredible.
Well, I just want to say thank y'all for having me. I hope, may both of you just be happy, may you be well, and may this podcast flourish, really. And I really trust that it will. And I trust both of you, and I trust that, all of the listeners' process for whatever they take away from this will be exactly what they need.
Yeah.
And so thank you to each of you. And I can't wait for the next time that, we can all be in relationship and dialogue and conversate and, help each other learn more.
Damn right. That's what it's all about.
Hell
Having
yeah,
conversations, growing together. And yeah, okay, that was
Just
awesome.
Getting out our dreams, man.
Getting out our dreams.
Good music. That's Kanye,
right.
but
This is the good podcast. God damn it.
And let's end on this one quote. So since you're talking about paradoxes, you know what Socrates said? I know one thing, that I know nothing.
Oh. Nice. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for being here. Adam, as always, thank you for talking with me and just being my buddy and doing this podcast with me. So to all you guys out there,
What an episode, man.
what a way to start it.
What a number one episode.
What an episode number one.
Wow.
So yeah, we'll be back a week from now, Friday at midnight, the Midnight Variety Hour with Tom and Adam. Until next time, you guys, as always, stay safe in the cosmos.
Peace. Love you
Peace.
guys.